Well, it's been a little while, just been working, been slacking on the videos, but figured it's about time to give you guys an update because we got a new project. So this is a 99 Ranger that's a class 7 truck. We got it a couple weeks ago with the motor. Basically the chassis was somewhat of a roller on the front, steering's hooked up and everything, so we were able to bring it in here on dollies, and then the rear of the chassis had no axle under it, no nothing. So in the last 2 weeks or so, we've been working on the rear suspension. This was a pieced together Camberg 3-link kit that didn't have the upper link, the wishbone style 3rd link. So we did 2 separate upper links, but it's using the Camberg bolt-on pivot boxes for the lower trailing arm and then the uppers on the chassis side. Go ahead and crawl under here so you can see the cross member for the carrier bearing, or what's going to be the carrier bearing mount. Has the 2 supports that go up to the upper pivot boxes, and then the lowers you can see under there. Everything on this kit is bolted on the chassis side, and then brings us up here to what would have been in the 3-link kit, the wishbone style upper link, but we went ahead and made our own upper link pivot box, whatever you want to call it. And then this housing came in completely bare, so we did the lower pivots on the axle, we did this back truss. It's got an access hole for the fill port. Well, I guess the fill port's up here, but that's kind of just like a sight tube to know where your level's at, and then a drain plug down here. So we did that back truss on here. Since this is an offset 9-inch, this upper link box took me some time to get figured out, but we got it all figured out. I had originally drawn it to where basically this whole back plane was just flat, and it just looked really boxy. It still looks kind of boxy to me, but there's only so much you can kind of do with these upper link boxes. And I was gonna draw out these outside points to come out further, but since we got the fill port right here, I ended up just landing it right here and then doing this kind of kick in the back to give it some dimension. And then on the inside here, we filled in these ports right here. That way there's no way that water, dirt, debris can get back in there in that crevice back there. So it's all boxed in back there to keep it all sealed up. Right now I just have this little hook tacked on here. That way I can get the engine hoist in here and cycle the travel up and down easy, because the diff is offset, so putting a jack under the diff doesn't lift it level. So this just gives me an easy point to pick up and lower. We're trying to maximize as much up travel on this as we can and use the bump cans that were already on this chassis. So we are packaging a 14-16, a 14-inch coilover and a 16-inch bypass. So setting all this up how we want to the bump height and everything, we are going to have to change the whole upper shock mount packaging, because on a 14 the shock eye is going to be way up here, so we're going to need to cut this whole thing out and redo all of that. So this chassis used to house 2 vertical spares back here, and the customer wants now a horizontal spare laid down over the top, and then the fuel cell behind the axle. This chassis used to run dual batteries right here and then a fuel cell up against the cab, and we are now relocating it to behind the axle with the spare laid down. So that's why we cut out all the chassis tubing down here. We'll redo all that, get the fuel cell mounted. And as far as the interior goes on this truck, it's already got a full cage. It's got a usable fiberglass dash in it. And then up front, we are going to be mounting this 3.7 V6 that's out of a Mustang. So we'll be doing motor mounts, the transmission mount, and then this customer's going to pick the truck up probably, and it'll come back to us for all the upper shock mounts on the chassis side. But for now, we're just going to get the motor mounted, get a radiator mounted up front, probably get the seats mounted. So that's kind of the list of stuff we have on this truck right now. I'm sure we're going to end up doing a whole bunch more to it, but for now it's kind of just making it a roller, mounting the drivetrain. He's got a bunch of like mounting the fuel pump, like I said, mounting the fuel cell, doing the radiator, just kind of mounting a bunch of stuff, and then he's going to do wiring and plumbing and all that. But yeah, this is kind of new to me. I've done a lot of rock crawler stuff, but haven't done a whole lot of desert truck stuff, so it's kind of fun to do something different. I've been trying to do as much research as I can so that I can figure out the right numbers to run and everything. I was doing all the geometry on the rear suspension, getting all that figured out. Camberg gives you some of the measurements, and obviously the pivot boxes on the chassis side can only really go in one spot, so that's kind of figured out for you. The only real numbers I kind of played around with is the height of the upper link mounts on the axle side to try to get the anti-squat and everything as close to 100% as possible. All right, so it's the next day now. Got the motor in the truck. Everything's looking good. Got the motor plates made with the poly bushing mount. The transmission is going to be rubber mounted. It's got the factory rubber mount that was on this transmission, so we're going to use that mount and then do the poly mounts up here. This is just going to tie down into the chassis right here, and then on the driver's side, I've got to cut this factory mount off right here and then just land from that tube down into this cross member right here. But I'm pretty happy with how everything lines up in this car. The steering linkage clears right here just barely. I did have to take the exhaust manifold off to get it in here, and I haven't put it back on yet, so I'm not sure if the stock manifold's going to clear the steering linkage. If we absolutely have to, we can offset it to the passenger side just a little bit, but I'm gonna try to keep it centered as much as possible. Everything up here looks good, clears the steering rack nice. I'll have to get the intake manifold put on here, make sure we clear, but I don't think we're gonna have any issues because that manifold's not that tall. I think we'll have plenty of clearance on this upper tube. Inside the cab, obviously, this will end up getting all sealed back off, but as far as how it's cut out right now, we're all looking good. The center tunnel right here might end up getting cut back a little bit because we might have to raise the engine and transmission up just a little bit so that you can get the oil pan off the engine with that factory cross member in there. But other than that, everything's looking pretty good. And then as far as the cross member mount goes, we're going to reuse this Camberg mount that the customer had. We're just going to cut off this center section right here, build a new mount in the center right here that bolts up to the existing mount on the transmission. And then that's how we'll be mounted back here. And then from there, we'll have a mid shaft that goes to a carrier bearing at this mount. And then the two-piece drive shaft going to the rear. And then the cage is tied into the chassis in all the points inside. The only place we did have to cut it off is it tied in to the chassis right where this link mount landed, and there was a fish plate here, so we had to cut all that off, land the link mount, and now we'll have to re-tie in the cage to the chassis. But for now, that's kind of good progress for this week. I've been slacking on my buggy. I know I need to get back on it. It's at the same exact spot it was in the last video. Just been busy working on the Ranger. Pretty soon parts are going to show up for the JK, and we're going to do the front and rear suspension on that. Triangulated 4-link front and rear. Get rid of that 3-link that swings and arcs all over the place. I don't know if I had explained this in a previous video, but this Jeep had a 3-link that arced over so much with the track bar. It had a super short track bar in it, and the axle swung over like a foot as it went through its travel. So the pinion was hitting on the gas tank, causing a bunch of issues. So we're redoing all the suspension on that, and that'll be coming soon. But that's about it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna try to get back on videos. It's just been hard to film and work at the same time like always, but I'm gonna really try to get back on videos. Let me know in the comments if you guys wanna see me working or just do this kind of update style where I just get work done and then come in and film after the fact and show you what got done. So keep it classy, and I'll see you guys in the next one.